The second theme I call social and cultural reproduction in schools. This framing of the conversation about difference and inequality came to the fore in the 1970s and 80s with the work of British ethnographers of education, such as Stuart Hall and Paul Willis, French sociologists like Pierre Bourdieu, and American sociologists of ed like your own Michael Apple and also Lois Weiss. Their work encouraged educational ethnographers to examine the ways in which schools are organized to produce and reproduce consent for inequalities through such things as unequal structural arrangements like tracking, curriculum differentiation of various kinds, and special education and other programs like that. And also through institutionalized discourses of difference, such as those that construct fast or slow readers, learning disabled students, English language learners, the urban poor, and of course, minority students. These researchers exposed underlying inequalities in the way students were grouped, sorted, and labeled in schools, the ways knowledge was embedded and privileged in curricula, and the ways resources and rewards were distributed across schools and classrooms. Because for the most part, these features of schooling are accepted or taken for granted as just the way school is, they are not often challenged, and thus they reproduce difference and inequality on a daily basis in schools. An extension of this framing appeared in the influential book by Paul Willis, Learning to Labor, which you may know. He argued that some students, even though they are in a context that tends to reproduce inequalities and difference, some students don't accept these categories, and they resist or oppose what the school is, the way the school is categorizing them and treating them. And Willis wrote about students, and I quote, "They are social agents who are not passive bearers of ideology, but active appropriators who reproduce existing structures through struggle, contestation, and a partial penetration of the structures," unquote. In other words, students' responses to demeaning and stratifying institutional features and discourse could vary from practices of acceptance to practices of resistance to practices of opposition and innovation, making social and cultural reproduction likely but not certain. About this second framing of the conversation, Fred Erickson has written, and I quote here, "The shift in understanding of culture from a tightly integrated set of rules learned in childhood to a more flexible array of principles for action, belief, and desire, which are then enacted adaptively and opportunistically in practice, became a fundamental change in American anthropology and in culture theory. In the dialectic between schooling's institutional categories and individual or group responses to those categories, social hierarchies and discourses of educational and individual difference usually are reproduced, but various outcomes are possible." If you know Willis's book, the lads in the book did not accept the school's positioning of them, but in rejecting it, they acted in ways that ended up reproducing their working class status.